The late afternoon sun sliced between Manhattan's skyscrapers, casting long, dramatic shadows across the great lawn of Central Park. David Miller, a 40-year-old man whose high-stress life in finance was etched into his prematurely graying hair and weary blue eyes, walked with a distracted air, his hand loosely holding that of his 4-year-old son, Ethan. Dressed in a bespoke suit that was starkly out of place among the casual parkgoers, David's voice was tense as he barked into his phone. "No, we can't postpone the meeting the investors are pushing, and we need to close this deal by the end of the week," he said, his brow furrowed with a familiar mix of pressure and ambition. Ethan, a boy with a mop of brown hair and endlessly curious eyes, tugged at his father's hand, desperate to get to the swings. David ended the call with a sigh that tasted of frustration and guilt. He looked down at Ethan, a pang hitting him squarely in the chest. "I'm sorry, buddy, Dad D here. Now shall we play?" Ethan's face lit up, his eyes shining with pure, unadulterated anticipation. "Can I play ball, Dad?" David nodded, pulling a colorful ball from the designer backpack he carried. He tossed it to Ethan, watching his son sprint gleefully across the grass. For a fleeting moment, a wave of profound love and regret washed over David. How many perfect afternoons like this had he sacrificed at the altar of the stock market, trapped in sterile boardrooms and endless conference calls? As Ethan played, David's gaze drifted, scanning the diverse tapestry of New York life around him before settling on a solitary figure on a worn-out bench. It was a girl, no older than Ethan, with a tangled mess of dark hair and clothes so tattered they seemed to be dissolving. Her large, sad eyes watched the other children, her gaunt face a portrait of unmistakable hunger and exhaustion. David felt a tightening in his chest, a familiar discomfort. The girl was one of the city's countless homeless children, a statistic he acknowledged but had trained himself to ignore. Before the thought could fully form, his phone buzzed again, yanking him back to his world. "Mr. Miller, sorry to bother you, but we have an urgent situation at the office." His assistant's voice crackled through the receiver. David sighed, turning his attention back to the crisis of the moment. What is it now? While he was drawn back into the vortex of his work, Ethan, lost in the joy of his game, kicked the ball farther and farther away. The sheer excitement made him oblivious to his surroundings. With one particularly strong kick, the ball shot towards the busy street bordering the park. Without a second thought, Ethan bolted after it. David, still deep in his phone call, didn't immediately register the impending disaster. The girl on the bench, however, saw it all unfold. Her eyes widened in terror as she saw Ethan running directly into the path of an approaching yellow cab. Without a flicker of hesitation, she launched herself from the bench, ignoring the weakness in her own limbs, and ran with a speed born of pure instinct. "Ethan!" David shouted, finally seeing where his son was headed. He dropped his phone, his heart hammering against his ribs in sheer terror. It all happened in a flash. The girl reached Ethan just as his small foot was about to touch the pavement. She wrapped her arms around his waist, yanking him backward with all her might. They both tumbled onto the grass as the taxi sped by, inches from where Ethan would have been. David ran, his legs trembling with a cocktail of fear and overwhelming relief. He swept Ethan into his arms, tears streaming down his face. "My God, Lucas, are you okay? Never do that again," Ethan, frightened and bewildered, began to cry in his father's arms. David held him, his entire body shaking as the reality of what had almost happened sunk in. When he finally composed himself enough to think, David turned to the girl who had saved his son. She stood a short distance away, her posture uncertain, ready to flee. You saved my son," David said, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. "How can I thank you? What can I do for you?" The girl looked at him, her wide, weary eyes assessing him. She hesitated, as if the question itself was a foreign concept. Finally, in a low, hoarse voice that was barely a whisper, she said, "A plate of food, please. I haven't eaten in days." The words struck David like a physical blow. he truly saw the girl for the first time, her shocking thinness, her dirt-caked clothes, her bare, bruised feet. This child, who had absolutely nothing, had just risked everything to save his son. Without warning, David felt hot tears carving paths down his own cheeks. He wept openly, a raw, unrestrained sob in the middle of Central Park, oblivious to the stares of strangers. Years of repressed emotion, of misplaced priorities and squandered moments with his son all came rushing to the surface. What's your name?" he asked between sobs. "Sophie," the girl answered timidly. David moved closer, kneeling slowly to meet her gaze. "Sophie, you won't just get a plate of food. I'm taking you to my home, and I'll make sure you have everything you need. You'll never go hungry again. I promise." Lily looked at him, her expression a fragile mix of hope and ingrained distrust. David gently held out his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Lily took it. As they walked towards David's gleaming black car, Ethan holding his other hand tightly, David felt a profound tectonic shift within his own soul. The emptiness he had relentlessly tried to fill with wealth and success suddenly seemed pathetic compared to this small girl's courage and simple, desperate need. On the ride home to his sprawling suburban mansion, David glanced in the rearview mirror. The two children sat in the back seat. Ethan, still a little rattled, looked at Lily with a newfound curiosity. Lily seemed lost in her own world, her wide eyes drinking in the luxurious interior of the car as if it were a spaceship. Sophie Thomas called gently, "How long have you been living on the streets?" The girl, Lily, took a moment, as if the concept of time was a blur. "I'm not sure it's a long time," she finally said, her voice a ghost of a sound. David's heart clenched. How could a child so young have been alone for so long? Where were her parents? What was her story? 1,000 questions swirled in his mind, but he knew this was not the time. When they pulled up to David's mansion, Lily's mouth fell open. The enormous house, set amidst manicured gardens and ornate fountains, was a palace from a fairy tale to a girl accustomed to sleeping in alleyways. "Let's go inside," David said kindly, opening her door. "First, let's make sure you get something to eat." In the spacious, state-of-the-art kitchen, David asked the housekeeper, a kind, middle-aged woman named Betty, to prepare a nourishing meal. Betty, though visibly surprised by Lily's appearance, asked no questions and immediately began making hot soup, sandwiches, and cutting up fresh fruit. Lily sat at the massive kitchen island, her feet dangling high above the polished floor, her eyes tracking Betty's every move as if the food might vanish. When the steaming bowl of soup was placed before her, she hesitated, looking at David for permission. "Go ahead and eat," Sophie Thomas said softly. "It's okay." With trembling hands, Lily picked up the spoon and took her first taste. Her eyes filled with tears at the simple warmth and flavor of real food. She began to eat quickly, desperately, as if afraid someone would snatch the plate away. "Slow down, dear," Mary said gently. "There's more if you want it. No one's going to take it from you." Lily slowed her pace but continued to eat with a ravenous hunger that was painful to watch. David and Ethan sat in silence, both deeply affected by the sight. While Lily ate, David found himself reflecting on his own life. He had everything: money, power, a business empire, and yet he had been living in a void. Watching this small, starving girl who had risked her own life for his son, David realized just how far he'd strayed from anything that truly mattered. After the meal, David led Lily to a beautifully appointed guest room. "You can stay here, Sophie. This room is yours now." Lily looked around, her eyes wide with wonder at the sheer size of the room and the impossibly soft bed. She touched the crisp, clean sheets with reverence, as if they were spun from gold. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly. "Call me Thomas," he replied with a gentle smile. "Now, how about a warm bath? Warm Mary will help you get cleaned up and find some clean clothes." While Betty took care of Lily, David took Ethan to his room. His son was unusually quiet. "Is everything okay, buddy?" David asked, sitting on the edge of the bed beside him. Ethan looked at his father, his expression serious. "Is Sophie going to live with us now?" "Dad?" David paused. He hadn't thought that far ahead. The day had been a whirlwind. "I'm not sure, son. For now she'll stay with us. She needs help." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "She saved my life," he said simply. "Yes, she did," David agreed, feeling a fresh wave of emotion. "And for that, we'll always be grateful to her." Later that night, with both children finally asleep, David sat in his home office, an untouched glass of whiskey on the polished desk. His phone was buzzing incessantly, calls from the office, from partners, all marked urgent, all demanding his attention. But for the first time in years, David didn't care. He picked up a framed photo of Ethan, his thumb tracing his son's smiling face. Today, he had almost lost everything, and he had been saved by a homeless girl, a child that society, and he himself, had chosen to ignore. A new resolve hardened within him. He would help Lily, yes, but it had to be more than that. He would use his resources, his influence, to do more, to be a better man, to help create a world where children like Lily were no longer invisible. With this new purpose solidifying in his mind, David finally picked up his phone, but not to return work calls. He dialed his lawyer's number. "Jerry, it's Thomas. I need your help. I want to start the process to become the legal guardian of a child." As he spoke, David looked out at the starry night sky. Somewhere out there were more children like Lily, lost and forgotten. And David Miller, the workaholic millionaire, was going to do everything in his power to change that. The day that had begun like any other had become the defining moment of his life. A little homeless girl had saved more than just his son's life. She had saved David's soul, reminding him of what truly mattered. And as the night wore on in David Miller's mansion, 3 souls slept. One boy who had learned about bravery, one girl who had found a glimmer of hope, and one man who had just rediscovered his purpose. Tomorrow would bring challenges, undoubtedly, but it would also bring the promise of a new journey, a chance for redemption, and the opportunity to make a difference, one plate of food at a time. David Miller sat in his luxurious office as the first rays of morning sunlight streamed through the large windows, his gaze fixed on a photo of Ethan on his desk, but his mind wandered to the small figure asleep in the guest room. Lily, the girl who had appeared out of nowhere and turned his world upside down in a matter of hours. He ran a hand through his prematurely gray hair, recalling the impulsive decision he'd made the night before. Taking in a homeless child. What was he thinking? David was a businessman, a man of cold calculations and risk assessments, but none of his vast experience had prepared him for this. A sudden flashback transported him to his own childhood. David, just 10 years old, helping his mother count coins at the kitchen table, trying to figure out if they had enough to pay rent. The smell of thin soup in the air, the only dinner they could afford. His father, a good man beaten down by life, coming home from another long day at a factory that paid next to nothing. David shook his head, dispelling the memories. He had vowed never to go through that again, that he would give his son everything he himself never had. And now, here he was, confronted with a child who lived in conditions even worse than what he'd faced. A gentle knock on the door brought him back to the present. It was Betty, the housekeeper. "Mr. Becca, the girl, is awake." "She seems a bit disoriented." David stood up quickly. "Thank you, Mary. I'll go talk to her." Entering the guest room, David found Lily huddled in a corner, her large, frightened eyes darting around the luxurious surroundings. "Good morning, Sophie," he said softly, approaching slowly. "Did you sleep well?" Lily nodded timidly. Is this real? Can I really stay here?" David's heart ached. "Yes, Sophie, you can stay as long as you need." At that moment, Ethan burst into the room, his face lit up by a big smile. "Sophie, want to see my toys?" The tension on Lily's face eased a little, and she glanced at David, who nodded encouragingly. As the children left the room, David felt a wave of guilt. How many times had he denied Ethan moments like this, always putting work first? Later that day, while Lily timidly explored the mansion with Ethan, David found himself faced with a call he'd been dreading. His ex-wife, Sarah. "Thomas, what is this insanity? I'm hearing you took in a homeless girl to live with you." Sarah's voice was a mix of disbelief and anger. David sighed. "Amanda, she saved our son's life. I couldn't just ignore that. Since when do you care so much? You barely have time for Lucas, and now you want to play hero for a stranger." Her words hit him like a slap. She was right, of course. He had been an absent father, always prioritizing work. "Things are going to change, Amanda. I promise, for Lucas and for Sophie. And what about the legal implications, Thomas, did you think of that you can't just pick up a child off the street and decide to raise her?" David knew she was right. The legal complications would be huge. But something inside him had changed. For the first time in years, he felt he was doing the right thing, not the most profitable or strategic thing. "I'll take care of everything, Amanda, trust me." After hanging up, David immediately called his lawyer, Bob, starting the process of obtaining temporary custody of Lily. It would be a battle, he knew, but he was determined to win it. The following days were a whirlwind of adjustments. Lily, accustomed to the harshness of the streets, found it hard to adapt to the mansion's luxury. David caught her several times sleeping on the floor, saying the bed was too soft. She stashed food in her pockets, afraid the next meal might not come. David watched it all with a mix of sadness and determination. He remembered his own journey, how hard it was to adapt to a life of wealth after years of poverty. One day, as he walked down the hallway, David overheard voices coming from Ethan's room. Peeking through the partially open door, he saw Ethan and Lily sitting on the floor, surrounded by toys. "Have you never had a doll?" Ethan asked, incredulous. Lily shook her head. "No, but I had a teddy bear once, found it in the trash and fixed it up, but later I had to trade it for food." David felt his heart break. In that moment, he promised himself he would do everything he could to give Lily the childhood she deserved. Deciding to enroll Lily in school was another challenge. David knew she had probably never attended school regularly, if at all. On her first day at Oakwood Elementary, Lily was visibly nervous. David knelt in front of her, adjusting her new uniform. "Remember, Sophie, you're smart and brave. You'll do great." Lily nodded, but her eyes were filled with fear. David watched her walk into the building, feeling a mix of pride and concern. The first few weeks were tough. Lily struggled to keep up with the classes and connect with other children. David got frequent calls from the school about behavior issues or academic struggles. One night, he found Lily crying in her room. "What's wrong, dear?" he asked gently. "I'm stupid," Sophie sobbed. "I can't do anything right at school. Maybe I should just go back to the streets." David felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. He sat down next to her on the bed. "Sophie, look at me," he said gently. "You're not stupid. You're one of the smartest, bravest people I've ever met. You just need time to adjust, and I'll be here to help you every step of the way." As he comforted Lily, David remembered his own struggle to stand out in school while coming from a poor background, studying late into the night, determined to break his family's cycle of poverty. In the days that followed, David cut back his work hours, spending more time helping Lily with her studies and bonding with Ethan. He hired private tutors for Lily, determined to help her overcome her academic challenges. Ethan, meanwhile, had grown very attached to Lily. He followed her everywhere, eager to show her his favorite toys or teach her games she had never heard of. One afternoon, David found them in the garden. Ethan was teaching Lily how to ride a bike, holding the seat as she pedaled tentatively. "You can do it," Sophie Lucas shouted encouragingly. "You're the bravest girl in the world. You saved me." Remember, David watched the scene with a full heart. It was as if Lily had always been part of their lives. Not everything was rosy, however. David still faced disapproval from Sarah and some of his business associates. Many couldn't understand why he was wasting his time and resources on a homeless child. "You're ruining your reputation, Thomas," a colleague told him at a business lunch. "Think about what this could do to your public image." But David no longer cared about such opinions. He had found a new purpose, something money and business success had never given him. One night, as he tucked Ethan into bed, his son surprised him with a question. Dad Fawn asked him, "Is Sophie my sister?" Now David hesitated for a moment. "Well, Lucas, legally no, but in our hearts, yes, she's part of our family now." Ethan smiled, satisfied with the answer. "That's good. I always wanted a sister." That night, lying in bed, David reflected on how his life had changed in the past few weeks. He was sleeping less and working less, yet paradoxically felt more alive and fulfilled than ever before. He picked up his phone and, after a moment of hesitation, called Sarah. "Hey, Amanda, sorry for calling so late. I wanted to say thank you. Thank me for what she asked," puzzled. "For being an amazing mother to Lucas all these years while I was too busy building an empire. I was a jerk, and I'm sorry." There was a long silence on the other end. When Sarah finally spoke, her voice was softer. "Thank you, Thomas. That means a lot. And maybe I've been too harsh about Sophie, if she's important to you. And Lucas, then I support your decision." David felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Thank you, Amanda. It means a lot to all of us." After hanging up, David went to check on Lily. He found her sleeping peacefully, clutching a teddy bear Ethan had given her. For the first time since arriving, she looked truly relaxed and at peace. David smiled, a wave of paternal affection surprising him with its intensity. He knew the road ahead would be hard. There would be legal hurdles, emotional challenges, and continuous adjustments. But looking at Lily's sleeping face, he knew every struggle would be worth it. His impulsive decision to take Lily in had triggered a series of events that were transforming not only her life, but his and Ethan's as well. David Miller, the ruthless businessman, was learning the true meaning of family, love, and purpose. As he gently closed the door to Lily's room, David made a silent promise. He would be the father Lily had never had, and the father Ethan had always deserved. And in the process, maybe he would finally become the man he'd always wanted to be. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, David faced it not with anxiety or cold calculations, but with hope and determination. The journey begun by a little homeless girl's act of heroism was only just beginning, and David was ready for every step along the way. David's office was dimly lit by the glow of his desk lamp as evening set in. He leaned back in his leather chair, eyes fixed on a thin folder his private investigator had delivered earlier that day. With a deep sigh, he opened it, revealing the scant information uncovered about Lily's past. The first pages contained only fragments: a partial birth record, a brief stay at an orphanage, and then nothing. It was as if Lily had simply vanished from the system. David felt a knot form in his throat as he read the single concrete detail. Abandoned in front of St. Mary's Hospital, estimated age 3 months. He closed his eyes, picturing a defenseless baby left alone on a cold night. How could anyone do that? What could have driven Lily's parents to make such a drastic decision? A gentle knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Lily, her wide, curious eyes peering through the slightly open door. "May I come in, Mr. Thomas?" she asked timidly. David quickly closed the folder. "Of course, Sophie, and remember, you can just call me Thomas." Lily stepped inside, her small bare feet making little sound on the plush carpet. She approached the desk, her eyes traveling over the scattered papers and books. "What are you doing?" she asked, curiosity evident in her voice. David hesitated. "Actually, Sophie, I was trying to find out more about you, about your life before we met at the park." Lily's eyes grew a bit wider, a shadow crossing her young face. "Oh," she said simply, her voice small. David leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Sophie, Do you remember anything about your life before the streets about your parents?" Lily was silent for a long moment, her fingers absent-mindedly toying with the hem of her shirt. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't remember my parents. I only remember being alone." David felt his heart tighten. He stood up and knelt next to Lily, so he was at her eye level. "Would you tell me about your life on the streets? And Sophie only, if you want to?" Of course, Lily looked at him, her eyes full of a maturity no child her age should possess. Then slowly she began to speak. "The streets are cold," she said, "and loud, but sometimes if you know where to look, you can find warm, quiet places to sleep." She told David about the hidden alleys where she slept, how she learned to search dumpsters behind restaurants for food, the dangers posed by other homeless individuals and by bad people on the streets. But not everyone was bad, Lily continued, a small smile forming on her lips. "There was a lady who sometimes gave me warm bread and a man who played guitar in the square. He taught me a few chords." David listened intently, both horrified and awed by the wisdom and experiences Lily carried. How had such a young child survived alone for so long? Sophie Thomas said softly. When she finished, "You are the bravest person I've ever met." Lily looked at him in surprise, as if she wasn't used to receiving compliments. "I only did what I had to do to survive," she said simply. In that moment, David made a decision. He stood, determination shining in his eyes. "Sophie, I want you to know that you'll never have to do that again. I will take care of you. Always." Lily gazed at him with a mixture of hope and caution. "You promise, I promise," David said firmly. "In fact, I want to do more than that. Sophie, how would you feel if I became your legal guardian? That means I'd be responsible for you. Legally, you'd be part of our family." Lily's eyes filled with tears. I could stay here forever." David smiled, feeling his own eyes grow damp. "Yes, Sophie, forever." In the days that followed, David threw himself fully into the legal process of becoming Lily's guardian. He hired the best attorneys, filled out mountains of paperwork, and prepared for any obstacle that might arise. Meanwhile, Lily continued adjusting to her new life. At Oakwood Elementary, after a tough start, she began to excel in certain areas, especially art. One day, David was called to the school for a meeting with Lily's art teacher, Mrs. Davis. Worried, he rushed down the hallway, fearing bad news. To his surprise, Mrs. Davis greeted him with a radiant smile. "Mr. Becca, thank you for coming. I wanted to show you something." She led him to a wall covered in colorful drawings. At the center was one that stood out, a vibrant painting of a park depicting a dark-haired girl saving a small boy from an oncoming car. "Sophie painted this. Miss Winters explained she has extraordinary talent, Mr. Becca. The way she uses color, the emotion she conveys. It's truly remarkable for someone her age." Thomas was speechless, moved as he recognized the artistic representation of the moment that changed their lives. She never had any art lessons before," he managed to say. M. Winters smiled. "Well then, it's a natural gift, Mr. Becca. I really believe Sophie has the potential to be an amazing artist with the right support and encouragement. Who knows where her talent could lead." That night, David surprised Lily with a complete art set: brushes, paints, canvases, colored pencils. Her eyes shone with excitement at the gifts. Is all this for me?" she asked, incredulous. David nodded, smiling. "Yes, Sophie, your teacher showed me your work today. You have incredible talent, and I want you to have all the tools to explore it." Lily hugged David tightly, tears of gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you, Thomas. Thank you for everything." As he watched Lily immerse herself in her new world of colors and creativity, David reflected on the journey they had taken. The secrets of Lily's past were still largely hidden, but her future was bright with possibilities. He knew there would still be challenges ahead: the guardianship process, Lily's ongoing adjustment, the looks and comments from those who didn't understand his decision. But watching the girl focused on her painting, David knew every struggle would be worth it. Lily might have been abandoned in the past, but now she had a home, a family, and a future brimming with hope. And David was determined to stand by her every step of the way, helping her paint a new chapter of her life, filled with vibrant colors and promise. The morning sun streamed through David's office window, illuminating the stack of untouched documents on his desk. For the first time in years, reports and proposals were not his priority. Instead, his eyes were fixed on the window, watching Lily and Ethan playing in the garden. David smiled as he saw Lily chasing Ethan around the fountain, both laughing gleefully. It was hard to believe that just a few months ago, Lily was a solitary girl on the streets, and David was an absentee father lost in his corporate world. Determined to spend the day with the children, David set aside his laptop and headed to the garden. "Who's up for a picnic?" he called, greeted by enthusiastic shouts from Ethan and a shy but bright grin from Lily. As they prepared the picnic basket together, David noticed how much more confident Lily was in the kitchen. She no longer hid food in her pockets or glanced anxiously at the refrigerator. It was a small but significant sign of progress. At the local park, David watched the kids playing, his heart filling with a joy he hadn't known was possible. Ethan ran up to him, tugging his hand. "Dad, come play with us," Lucas begged. David hesitated for a moment, thinking about the dozens of unread emails on his phone. But upon seeing the hopeful look in Ethan's eyes and Lily's cautious gaze, he realized there was no real choice. "Sure, buddy," he answered, getting up and following the kids to the playground. The hours flew by as they played, laughed, and shared stories. David was amazed at how much he'd missed in recent years, always putting work first. Ethan's laughter, Lily's tentative smile. These were treasures no contract or deal could replace. The next week, David decided to take the children to the community pool at the YMCA. While Lily jumped excitedly into the shallow end, Ethan stayed at the edge, eyes wide with fear. "What's wrong, Lucas?" David asked gently. "I'm scared of the deep water," Ethan admitted, embarrassed. Before David could respond, Lily swam over. "I used to be scared too," she said softly, "but I learned that water can be our friend if we know how to handle it." David watched in wonder as Lily patiently taught Ethan how to float, holding his hands and whispering words of encouragement. Little by little, the fear in Ethan's eyes was replaced with confidence and eventually joy. "Look, Dad, I'm swimming," Ethan shouted triumphantly, splashing his arms as Lily guided him gently. David felt his eyes welling up with tears, partly from seeing his son overcome a fear, but also from witnessing Lily's kindness and patience. This girl, who had endured so much, was helping others with a compassion beyond her years. That night, as he tucked the children into bed, David reflected on how his life had changed. He was spending less time in the office and more time at home, and surprisingly, he didn't miss the long work hours at all. However, his absence at the company hadn't gone unnoticed. The next morning, he was summoned to an urgent video conference with the board of directors. "Thomas, last quarter's numbers are worrying," one director said, his voice tense. "We need you focused and present. The company can't afford to have you distracted with personal matters." David felt a wave of frustration. "Personal matters? I'm taking care of my family. We understand you're going through changes at home," another director chimed in, "but remember what's at stake here. Hundreds of jobs, millions in investments." David was silent for a moment, his thoughts in turmoil. He knew the company needed him, but he also knew that Ethan and Lily needed him more. "Gentlemen," he finally responded, "I understand your concerns, but I also understand that I've spent years prioritizing this company over everything else that's going to change. I'll find a balance, but not at my family's expense." The call ended in tense silence, leaving David with a sense of uncertainty about his professional future. But when he left his office and saw Lily and Ethan waiting for him to have dinner together, he knew he'd made the right choice. That night, David was awakened by screams coming from Lily's room. He dashed in, finding her sitting up in bed, trembling and crying. "Sophie, sweetheart." "What's wrong?" he asked softly, sitting beside her. I have had a nightmare," Sophie sobbed. "I was back on the streets. It was cold and dark, and I was alone again." David gently wrapped his arms around her. "It's okay now, Sophie. You're safe. You're home." Lily clung to him, tears soaking his shirt. "Promise you won't send me away. Promise I can stay." David's heart broke at the fear in her voice. "Sophie, look at me," he said, lifting her chin gently. "You are part of this family now. This is your home forever, I promise." Slowly, Lily began to calm, her breathing steadying. David started quietly humming a lullaby his own mother used to sing, rocking Lily until she fell back asleep. As he watched her sleep, David felt a surge of protective love. He knew Lily's traumas wouldn't vanish overnight, but he was committed to being there for her, no matter what. In the days that followed, David made changes to his work schedule. He delegated more responsibilities, set clear boundaries for his working hours, and ensured he was present for important moments with the children. One afternoon, while helping Lily with her homework, David noticed a special spark in her eyes whenever she talked about her art class. "Mr. Winters said my painting might be chosen for the school exhibition," Sophie exclaimed, her face glowing with pride. David smiled, a wave of joy washing over him as he saw Lily so excited. "That's wonderful, Sophie, Sophie. I'm so proud of you." In that moment, seeing Lily's radiant smile, David realized that all the struggles, sleepless nights, and tense office meetings were worth it. He was witnessing the blossoming of a child who just months ago had nothing but her own courage to survive. As the days turned into weeks, David watched the bonds between Lily, Ethan, and himself grow stronger. Lily's nightmares became less frequent, and her smile more frequent. Ethan, inspired by Lily's courage, became more confident and protective of his new sister. And David, he discovered a new definition of success, no longer measured by closed deals or quarterly profits, but by the children's smiles, their daily small victories, and the love growing in his home. One afternoon, as he watched Lily and Ethan playing in the garden, David reflected on the journey they'd made. He knew more challenges lay ahead: the adoption process, Lily's ongoing adjustment, the delicate balance between work and family. But seeing the two children laughing and playing, David knew that together, as a family, they could face anything. The sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden. David called the children inside, promising an evening of board games and bedtime stories. As they walked hand in hand toward the house, he felt a deep sense of gratitude and purpose. This, he thought, was the true meaning of success. This was the legacy he wanted to leave, not a corporate empire, but a family bound by love, compassion, and the determination to look out for one another, no matter what. The day began like any other in the Miller household. David was making breakfast while Lily and Ethan excitedly discussed their plans for the weekend. The sound of the doorbell, however, interrupted the domestic scene. David opened the door to find two women with serious expressions. "Mr. Becca, I'm Andrea Lawson from Child Protective Services. This is my colleague, Patricia Reeves. May we come in?" David's heart pounded. He knew this day would come eventually, but he hadn't expected it so soon. "Of course, come in," he said, maintaining composure. The social workers, Karen Johnson and Michelle Smith, stepped inside, their eyes examining the house's interior. Karen got straight to the point. "Mr. Becker, we've received information that you're housing a minor without legal authorization. We're here to investigate the situation." David took a deep breath. "Yes, Sophie is staying with us. I found her homeless and couldn't just ignore her. I'm in the process of becoming her legal guardian," Michelle chimed in. "We understand your good intentions, Mr. Becker, but there are legal procedures that must be followed without proper authorization. What we have is an irregular situation that needs immediate resolution." At that moment, Lily appeared at the kitchen door, her eyes wide with fear at the sight of strangers. David could see the panic building in her face. "Sophie, sweetheart." "It's okay," David said calmly. "Why don't you and Lucas go play upstairs while I talk to these ladies?" Lily hesitated but obeyed, casting one last frightened glance back before climbing the stairs with Ethan. David turned to the social workers. "What exactly do you plan to do?" Karen sighed. "Mr. Becca, without the proper documentation, we have no choice but to remove Sophie and place her in state care until the situation is resolved legally." The words hit David like a gut punch. "You can't do that. Sophie finally found a home. A family taking her away now would be traumatic for her." "We understand your concern," Michelle said, "but we must follow legal protocol unless you can prove you have legal authority." Over Sophie will have to take her today. David felt a fierce determination rise inside him. "I won't let you take her. Give me time. I'll do whatever it takes to legalize Sophie's status." The social workers exchanged looks. Finally, Karen spoke. "We sympathize with your situation, Mr. Becker. We can give you 72 hours to initiate the proper legal process, but if we don't see substantial progress by then, we'll have no choice but to intervene." As soon as they left, David raced to the phone, calling his lawyer. "Jerry, I need you here. Now we have an emergency." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Bob arrived with a team of assistants, and David's living room turned into a makeshift law office. Papers were filled out, calls were made, and legal strategies were discussed in hushed tones. In the midst of it all, David heard a muffled sob from the staircase. He found Lily huddled at the top, trembling. "Sophie," he said gently, sitting next to her. "What's wrong, dear? They're going to take me away, aren't they?" she asked, her voice breaking. "I knew it was too good to be true. Nobody really wants me." David's heart broke at the fear in her voice. He pulled her into a tight hug. "Sophie, look at me. I promise you I won't let anyone take you. You're part of this family now, and I'll fight with everything I have to keep you here." Lily clung to him, burying her face in his chest. "Promise, I promise," David said firmly. "We're in this together forever." Over the next few days, David barely slept. He split his time between working with the lawyers, reassuring Lily and Ethan, and trying to keep his company running. Nights were spent reviewing legal documents and strategies. Amid the chaos, his phone kept ringing with calls from the board of directors. "Thomas, we need you here," one director insisted. "The company is suffering in your absence." David felt the weight of conflicting responsibilities crushing him. But looking at the photo of Lily and Ethan on his desk, he knew where his priority lay. "I'll do what I can remotely," he answered, "but my family comes first now." On the eve of the social worker's deadline, David gathered Lily and Ethan in the living room. "Kids, I need to be honest with you," he began. "We're facing some legal challenges to keep Sophie here." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I have to leave." David knelt in front of her. "Not if I can help it. I'm doing everything I can to make sure you stay with us, but I need you both to be strong and patient. We might face some tough moments, but we'll get through this together as a family." Ethan took Lily's hand. "Don't worry, Sophie. You're my sister now. We won't let anyone take you." The next morning, David faced the social workers again, this time armed with a stack of legal documents and accompanied by Bob. "We've initiated the guardianship process," Jerry explained. "Additionally, once we have statements from teachers, neighbors, and healthcare professionals attesting to Sophie's well-being under Mr. Becker's care, Karen and Michelle examined the paperwork carefully. After what seemed like an eternity, Karen spoke. "Well, Mr. Becca, it's clear you're taking this seriously, and following the proper steps will allow Sophie to remain in your care while the legal process continues. But we'll be monitoring the situation closely." David felt immense relief wash over him. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise I'll do right by Sophie." After the social workers left, David went upstairs to share the good news with Lily. He found her in her room, clutching a teddy bear, eyes red from crying. "Sophie," he said gently, I have good news, you can stay. We still have a road ahead of us, but we're making progress." Lily looked at him, a mix of hope and fear in her eyes. "Really? I can really stay?" David pulled her into a tight hug. "Yes, sweetheart, and I promise I'll fight with everything I've got to make it permanent." That night, as David watched Lily and Ethan sleep peacefully, he reflected on the events of the past days. The storm had come close to tearing apart the family they were building, but together they'd weathered the first wave. David knew there would be more challenges ahead. The adoption process would be long and complicated. His company needed attention. But gazing at the sleeping children, he knew he had made the right choice. This was his priority now. This was his family. With renewed determination, David returned to his office. There was more work to be done, more battles to fight, but now he had something truly worth fighting for: the love and security of two children who had become the center of his world. It was a crisp fall afternoon at Central Park, the air carrying the scent of dried leaves swirling in the breeze. David Miller sat on his favorite bench, watching Lily and Ethan play on the playground. In recent months, this had become a cherished weekend ritual for the family, a precious moment David wouldn't trade for any business meeting in the world. Lily, her dark hair in a slightly messy braid she'd insisted on doing herself that morning, swung higher and higher, her face lit up with a radiant smile that still made David's heart melt. Ethan ran around the playground, occasionally stopping to wave at his dad or show some new discovery to his adoptive sister. David smiled, allowing himself to relax as he watched the children. It was hard to believe that just a few months ago his life had been completely different. Endless days in the office, missed dinners, precious moments with his son lost in the name of corporate success. Now, seeing Lily and Ethan playing together, he knew he had found a different kind of wealth, one no bank balance could quantify. "Sophie, Sophie, is that you?" The trembling, elderly voice cut through the air like a bolt of lightning on a clear day, causing Lily to abruptly stop her swing. David stood up instantly, paternal instincts on high alert. An older woman, likely in her early 70s, approached with hesitant steps. She wore a neatly kept beige coat and carried an old leather purse, her white hair arranged in a traditional bun. "My goodness, it's really you," the woman whispered, her pale blue-gray eyes filling with tears as she fixed them on Lily. "For you look just like your mother, just like my Marie." David felt his heart skip a beat, as though someone had just pulled the rug out from under him. He quickly moved to Lily's side, who had hopped off the swing and was now looking at the woman with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "I'm sorry, but who are you?" David asked, trying to keep his voice calm and professional despite the swirl of emotions churning inside him. The woman finally broke her gaze from Lily, as though only just noticing David's presence. "My name is Ann Williams. I'm Sophie's grandmother." The world seemed to freeze for an instant. David felt his legs go weak, but he stood firm, aware of Lily's sudden grip on his pant leg. Ethan, sensing the tension, came closer to his father and sister. "How can you be sure?" David asked, his voice more hoarse than he intended. Evelyn opened her purse with trembling hands, searching its contents. She pulled out an old photograph, slightly yellowed at the edges, and held it out to David. "This is my daughter Marie when she was Sophie's age," Anne explained, her voice choked with emotion. "The resemblance it's unmistakable." David carefully took the photograph, feeling as though he were holding a live bomb about to detonate. His stomach dropped as he examined the image. The girl in the photo did indeed look strikingly like Lily. The same wide, expressive eyes, the same delicate face shape, even the same shy smile. "Why now?" Sophie asked suddenly, her voice small but firm. "Where were you all this time?" The question, so direct and loaded with years of hurt and abandonment, made Evelyn stagger slightly. Ethan, with a surprising sensitivity for his age, stepped forward and held Lily's hand in quiet solidarity. "Maybe we should sit down," David suggested, gesturing to a nearby bench beneath an old oak tree. "This seems like a conversation we need to have calmly." As they settled, Lily between David and Ethan, and Evelyn sitting across from them in a park chair Ethan had kindly fetched, an air heavy with imminent revelation hovered around them. Evelyn smoothed the pleats of her skirt nervously before she began. "Marie, your mother was only 18 when she left home. She was pregnant and head over heels in love with a young man named James Connor. He was a few years older, worked as a mechanic." Evelyn paused, her eyes distant with painful memories. "I didn't approve of the relationship. James came from a troubled family, had no formal education, and I was afraid he wouldn't be able to give my daughter a decent future. When Marie told me she was pregnant, we had a terrible fight." Lily listened closely, her little body tense. David kept an arm protectively around her, feeling each tremor that passed through her. Marie was determined and continued. She said she would run off with James, that they'd be happy together, that they'd raise their baby with love, even if they didn't have much money. I was too harsh, too proud. I said horrible things. Tears ran down Evelyn's wrinkled cheeks. When I woke up the next morning, she was gone. She left only a note saying not to look for her, that she'd make her own life with James and the baby. And then Sophie whispered what happened to them. Evelyn dabbed her tears with a crumpled handkerchief. "I searched for her for years, hired detectives, put ads in newspapers, scoured social media. It was as though they'd vanished from the face of the earth. I never knew she had given birth, that you existed, not until today when I saw your face, the face of my Marie." David felt a sharp pain in his chest as the puzzle pieces began to fit together. Lily's incomplete records, her abandonment, her years on the streets, all forming a tragic story of love, pride, and unintended consequences. "What do you want now?" David asked, his voice harsher than he intended. Evelyn met his protective gaze head-on. "I want to know my granddaughter. I want to try to right the wrongs of the past. I'm not here to cause trouble or take Sophie away from where she's happy. I just want to be part of her life, if she'll allow it." Lily looked up at David, tears shining in her eyes. "You'll still want to be my dad, even if I have a grandmother." David knelt in front of Lily, taking her small hands. "Sophie, listen closely. Nothing has changed. You're my daughter. No matter what happens, having a grandmother doesn't change our family. If you want to get to know her better, I'll support your decision, but never doubt my love for you." Lily hugged him tightly, finally letting her tears flow. Ethan joined the embrace while Evelyn watched, tears in her own eyes. Maybe Thomas said softly, "We can all learn to be a bigger family, different but still a family." In the following days, Lily began to process these revelations with David's help. Evelyn visited regularly, bringing photos and stories of Jennifer. Ethan helped ease tense moments with his honest remarks. One evening, as David tucked Lily into bed, he found her looking at a photo of Jennifer. "What are you thinking about, dear?" "Why, she left me. Thomas' Grandma Ann said she loved me." David sat on the edge of the bed. "Sometimes the people we love make hard choices for reasons we can't understand, but it doesn't mean the love wasn't real." Lily hugged her teddy bear. "You'll never leave me, right? Never. Sophie, you're my daughter forever." Evelyn proved to be a valuable addition to the family. Her presence brought not just a connection to Lily's past, but also a new kind of love and support that enriched all their lives. "Marie would be so happy to know Sophie found you." Anne told Thomas one afternoon that she has a father who loves her so much. David smiled, watching Lily and Ethan play. "And she has a grandmother who never gave up looking for her." The days turned into weeks, and the family dynamic shifted. Lily started calling Evelyn Grandma, though she sometimes still showed insecurity about her place in the family. One Saturday morning, as David made breakfast, he found Lily sitting on the porch, hugging her knees. "Is everything okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I was thinking about my mom." Sophie replied what she was like when she was my age. "Grandma Ann showed me more pictures yesterday." David put an arm around her shoulders. How do you feel about that, happy and sad?" At the same time, Sophie said, after a moment, happy to know more about her, but sad, because she's not here, it's normal to feel that way. David reassured her, "You can love your mom and miss her, even though you never really knew her, and still be happy with the family we have now." Lily rested her head on David's shoulder. "Sometimes I'm scared of what, sweetheart, that one day you won't want me anymore, or that my mom will show up and want to take me away." David felt a pang in his chest. "Sophie, look at me," he said gently. Once she raised her eyes to his, he continued, "You are my daughter. No matter what happens, no matter who shows up in our lives, that won't change. I chose you to be my daughter, and you chose me to be your dad. Those choices are as important as any. Blood ties promise, I promise. And you know what? Having Grandma in our lives doesn't make our love smaller, it just makes it grow even more." Lily smiled, a small but genuine smile, like the Grinch's heart. David laughed, recalling the movie they'd watched at Christmas. Exactly, our hearts can grow 3 sizes bigger to fit more love inside. Just then, Ethan appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas. "Are you two going to stay out here all day?" "I'm hungry." Lily laughed and stood up, pulling David along. "Come on, Dad, let's make pancakes." As they prepared breakfast together, David watched his unconventional family. Ethan was trying to make animal-shaped pancakes, Lily was sprinkling too much chocolate on hers, and soon Evelyn would arrive for the Sunday brunch that had become a tradition. Life had changed drastically over the last few months, but David couldn't be more grateful. The little homeless girl who saved his son had not only transformed his life, but was now at the center of a web of love and connections that kept on growing. And so they moved forward, not just a story of loss and abandonment, but one of love, acceptance, and the true meaning of family. Because in the end, David realized family was not about blood or legal papers, but about choices, love, and the courage to open one's heart to new possibilities. The doorbell rang, announcing Evelyn's arrival. Lily ran to answer, Ethan right behind her. David smiled, hearing their animated voices mingling in the foyer. Their family might not be conventional, but it was perfect the way it was, filled with love, understanding, and the promise of a future full of possibilities. David sat in his office, the glow of the computer screen casting shadows on his face in the evening gloom. On the screen, dozens of browser tabs were open, public records, social media searches, old news articles. Next to him lay a thick folder containing all the documents Evelyn had sent, saved over the years in her search for Jennifer. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Anne asked, her gentle voice breaking the silence. She was seated in a nearby armchair, holding a teacup that had gone cold. David leaned away from the screen, rubbing his tired eyes. "Sophie deserves to know the truth, Anne, whatever it is." The last month had been an emotional roller coaster for everyone. Since Evelyn had come into their lives, bringing with her the weight of Lily's past, David had watched his daughter grapple with questions no child should have to face. Dad, Sophie's voice came from the office door. She was in pajamas, clutching her favorite teddy bear. "I can't sleep." David opened his arms, and Lily rushed in, curling up in his lap. Evelyn looked on with a mix of tenderness and sadness. "Were you thinking about Mom again?" David asked softly, stroking Lily's hair. Lily nodded against his chest. "Grandma Ann showed me more pictures today, more she was so pretty. Why didn't she want me?" David's heart clenched at the pain in her voice. Evelyn let out a muffled sob. "Sophie, sweetheart," Anne began, moving closer. "Your mother was the most loving person I've ever known. Something must have happened, something terrible for her to have Evelyn's voice failed her." David realized this was the moment to make a definitive move. "Sophie, look at me," he said, waiting until her big brown eyes met his. "I'm going to make you a promise I will find out what happened to your parents. I can't promise we'll get all the answers, but I promise we'll do everything we can to understand. Can I help?" came a small voice from the door. Ethan stood there, still sleepy, but with a determined look on his young face. "Lucas?" "You should be in bed," David said, though he couldn't hide a smile. "Soph is my sister," Lucas declared, stepping forward. "I want to help find answers, too." Lily smiled for the first time that night, reaching out to her brother. Ethan took her hand, squeezing it reassuringly. "All right," David said, looking at the three people who had become his extended family. "We'll do this together, but now it's bedtime tomorrow. We'll start our search properly." In the days that followed, David mobilized every resource available. He hired top private investigators, scoured old records, and began piecing together a timeline of events. Evelyn spent hours with Lily, sharing not just photos, but stories of Jennifer growing up. Every little detail, Jennifer's love of drawing just like Lily's, her fear of thunder, her fondness for strawberry ice cream, helped Lily build a clearer picture of her biological mother. "She used to sing to you when she was pregnant," Anne mentioned one afternoon as they flipped through an old album. Marie would say you danced in her belly whenever you heard music. Lily touched a photo showing her mother, still pregnant, smiling radiantly at the camera. She looked so happy here she was, and confirmed, tears shining in her eyes. "And James, too, he wasn't a bad guy. You know, I was wrong to judge him so harshly. He truly loved your mother." Ethan, lying on the rug drawing pictures, lifted his head. Then why did they leave Sophie? The innocent question hung in the air. Evelyn exchanged a glance with David, who had paused his work to listen. "That's what we're trying to find out," Champy David replied. "Sometimes people make tough choices for reasons we can't understand, but you'd never do that," Lucas said confidently. "You'd never leave us." David felt his heart tighten. "No, I'd never leave, and that's why I want to help Sophie understand her past, because now she has a family that will never abandon her." That night, after the children went to bed, David shared an idea with Evelyn. "There's a house for sale on our street," he began cautiously, just a few blocks away. "I thought maybe you'd like to live closer." Evelyn seemed surprised. "Thomas, I couldn't possibly. Please let me finish," he interrupted gently. "Sophie is benefiting so much from having you around, and to be honest, you've become part of our family too. It would be good for all of us if you were nearby, but the house, it must be expensive." David shook his head. "Don't worry about that. Consider it an investment in Sophie's well-being and in yours too." Evelyn was silent for a long moment, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. "You are an extraordinary man. Thomas, Becca, Marie would be happy to know Sophie found you." Evelyn's move to a home nearby added a new dimension to family life. Lily began spending more time with her grandmother, soaking up stories and memories of her biological family, while still maintaining her normal routine with David and Ethan. One day, as they helped Evelyn unpack, Lily found an old diary. "It's your mother's," Anne explained, sitting on the floor next to Lily. She kept it while she was pregnant. With trembling hands, Lily opened the notebook, tracing the delicate handwriting on the pages. "Dear baby, 352. Today you moved for the first time. It felt like butterflies dancing inside me. Your dad was so thrilled when I put his hand on my belly so he could feel it. We can't wait to meet you." Lily abruptly closed the diary, tears streaming down her face. "They loved me," she whispered. "They really loved me." "Yes, sweetheart, they did," Anne confirmed, hugging her granddaughter. "That's why I'm sure something serious must have happened." Later that same week, David received an important call from one of his investigators. "Miss Becca, we found something, a hospital record from 16 years ago in a small town a few hours away. A Marie Connor was admitted with postnatal complications." David felt his heart race. "And she survived, sir. But there's something odd in the records. She was transferred to another hospital, yet there's no record of arrival at any facility." David frowned. "Keep digging. I want to know everything about that hospital, the doctors, anything that could give us a lead." As more information came to light, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The hospital in question had closed years later due to irregularities. Several employees had been indicted for involvement in illegal adoption schemes. "You think Anne began," her voice shaking. "It's possible Marie and James didn't abandon Sophie willingly," David finished the thought. "But we need proof before we tell her anything." The investigation continued, each new discovery raising more questions than answers. Lily, sensitive to the adults' tension, began having nightmares again. One night, David found her sitting on the porch, gazing at the stars. "Can't sleep?" he asked, settling beside her. Lily shook her head. "I'm scared of what, dear, of finding out the truth," she whispered. "What if? What if they're alive somewhere? What if they want to take me away?" David pulled Lily close. "No one is going to take you away. Sophie, you are my daughter legally and in my heart. Even if we find your biological parents, it won't change that promise. I promise, and you know what I think. If your parents are alive, they'd be happy to know you're safe and loved." Lily thought about that for a moment. Like Grandma Ann, just like Grandma Ann. In the days that followed, David noticed a shift in Lily. She asked more questions about the investigation, wanting to take an active role in finding answers. "I want to help," she declared over breakfast. "I want to understand who I am," Ethan, chewing his cereal, added, "You're Sophie Becca, my sister, but also Sophie. What was your mom's last name?" "A Grandma Williams Ann," answered with a smile. "Then Connor after she married James. So you're Sophie Becca Williams. Connor Lucas," concluded happily. "A person can have lots of families, right, Dad?" David smiled, marveling at his son's simple wisdom. "Yes, buddy, and the more love, the better." As the investigation progressed, David and Evelyn formed a strong partnership, each contributing their own strengths to the search. Evelyn provided memories and knowledge of the past, while David used his resources and connections to pursue new leads. I found this and said one afternoon, handing Thomas an old box their letters Marie sent in. The first weeks after running away, she stopped writing abruptly, after the last one, where she mentioned she was about to give birth. David examined the letters carefully. This could help us trace their journey. One evening, while David was working in his office, Lily came in quietly and sat in her usual chair. "Thomas," she asked after a few minutes of silence. "Yes, dear. Even if we find my mom and dad, you'll always be my dad, too." Right, David put down his pen and turned to face her. "Sophie, come here." She stood up and walked over. He lifted her onto his lap, just like he used to when she was smaller. "You chose me as your dad when you decided to trust me after you saved Lucas. I chose you as my daughter when I promised to take care of you. Those choices are just as strong as any blood ties. Nothing will change." That Lily hugged him tight. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, my little heroine." The next morning, David gathered everyone in the living room. Lily, Ethan, Evelyn, and even Betty, the housekeeper who had become part of the family. "I have news," he announced. The investigators found a promising lead. It seems Marie and James might have moved to Canada. After losing Sophie, Evelyn brought a hand to her mouth. Canada. Marie always talked about living there. "Yes," David continued, "and there's more. We found records of a couple by their names in Vancouver. They run an organization that supports parents who lost children under suspicious circumstances." The silence that followed was deafening. Lily gripped Ethan's hand tightly. "They think they lost me," she whispered. "They didn't abandon me." Evelyn began to cry softly. David knelt in front of Lily. "Sweetheart, we still need to confirm many details. I don't want to raise false hopes, but yes, it seems your parents may have been victims just like you." Lily absorbed the information slowly. Can we try to find them?" David looked at Evelyn, who nodded through her tears. "If you want, yes, but we'll do it at your pace whenever you feel ready." Ethan, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. "If we find them, can we have two families, like we have two kinds of ice cream in the freezer?" The innocent comparison broke the tension, making everyone laugh. "Yes, buddy," David replied, ruffling his son's hair. "We can have two families, actually. We already do. You and me, Our Sophie and Grandma, and maybe soon our family can grow even more." Lily looked around at the people gathered, her adoptive father, her brother, her newly found grandmother, and Betty, who smiled fondly from the corner. Each person represented a different piece of her story, a puzzle that formed her identity. "I'm ready," she finally declared. "I want to meet my parents, not to leave you, but to understand where I come from, to complete my story." David felt his heart swell with pride. His little Lily, the frightened girl he'd met at the park, had become a brave, wise young person beyond her years. "Then let's do it," he said, looking at each member of their extended family. "Let's find out the truth together, because that's what families do." They faced the challenges together. Lily's fingers glided gently over the paper, tracing colorful lines that gradually formed shapes. In the quiet of her room, she was creating her vision of the family she'd never known, a dark-haired woman, a kind-faced man, and a baby in their arms. In one corner of the page, she drew herself, David, Ethan, and Grandma Evelyn, connecting the two groups with a rainbow. "It's beautiful," Sophie came Evelyn's gentle voice from the doorway. She was holding an old box in her hands, tears brimming in her eyes. Lily smiled shyly. "My art teacher said sometimes drawing can help us understand our feelings." Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, placing the box next to her. "Your mother loved to draw too. Actually, I brought something to show you." From the box, she pulled out a worn sketchbook. "This was your mom's sketchbook when she was your age." Lily took the sketchbook reverently, her small hands brushing over the tattered cover. Opening it, she found pages upon pages of drawings, landscapes, animals, smiling faces. In the middle, one portrait caught her eye, a young man with dark hair and gentle eyes. "Is that James?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Anne confirmed your father. Marie drew that when they first started dating. She always said it was his smile that won her over." Meanwhile, in his office, David was facing a different battle. His lawyer, Bob, had just arrived with worrisome news. "With the possible location of the biological parents we need to prepare," Jerry explained, spreading documents on the desk. "If they really were victims of a criminal scheme, they might try to regain custody." Legally, David felt his stomach sink. "But Sophie is my daughter. I have legal guardianship, yes, but cases like this are complex. We need to strengthen our legal position while still searching for the truth." David ran a hand through his graying hair in frustration. "How do we do that without looking like we're trying to stop Sophie from meeting her biological parents?" "It's a delicate balance," Jerry admitted, "but there are precedents for shared custody in similar situations. The key is to show we're acting in Sophie's best interest." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Ethan came in, holding yet another of Lily's drawings. "Dad, look what Sophie made. It's all of us together like one big family." David took the drawing, feeling his heart tighten at how Lily had depicted them all united under a large, colorful heart. Even amidst legal uncertainty, his daughter found a way to express hope. That night, during dinner, Evelyn shared more memories of Jennifer. "I remember the day she told me she was pregnant," she said, her gaze distant. "Despite her fear, there was so much joy in her eyes. She already loved you so much, Sophie." "What was she like?" Sophie asked, pushing her food around on her plate. "When she found out I was coming," Evelyn smiled softly. "She sang to you constantly. She decorated the nursery with clouds and stars she painted herself." James spent hours assembling the crib, wanting it all to be perfect, David observed in silence, his heart torn between happiness at seeing Lily discover her roots and fear of losing her. Ethan, noticing his dad's tension, squeezed his hand under the table. After dinner, as they cleaned the kitchen, Evelyn approached David. "I found more letters," she said quietly. "Marie mentioned plans to go west, maybe Vancouver. She wanted a fresh start away from judgment." David nodded, thoughtful. "That matches what the investigators found. The question is what happened between those plans and the hospital where Sophie was born. The next day, Lily surprised everyone by asking to display her drawings in the living room. "I want everyone to see my families," she explained. "The one I have now and the one I hope to meet one day." David helped her arrange a small gallery. Each drawing told a piece of her story. Imagined portraits of Jennifer and Michael based on Evelyn's photos, scenes of her current life with David and Ethan, and hopeful visions of them all together. "It's like a puzzle," Lucas observed, admiring the drawings. "Each one is a different piece of Sophie Ethan's innocent wisdom," made David smile. Yes, that was exactly it. Lily wasn't losing or replacing family, she was completing her own puzzle. Meanwhile, the investigation pressed on. Hospital records revealed a disturbing pattern of lost babies during transfers, young and vulnerable parents, incomplete documentation. David and his team began piecing together what might have happened that fateful night. One afternoon, while Lily painted in her new art studio in the attic, a space David had created for her, she asked a question that caught him off guard. "Dad, do you think they'll find me like the person they imagined I'd be?" David sat beside her, watching the new canvas she was creating, a sunrise over two houses connected by a path filled with flowers. "Sophie, I'm sure you're more wonderful than they ever imagined. You're strong, talented, and compassionate, all the things your mom showed in her letters." Lily sat down her brush and hugged David. "I'm scared," she confessed. "What if they don't like me, or if they feel sad, because you're my dad?" "Now, oh sweetheart," David returned her embrace. "Anyone who meets you will love you, and as for me, being your dad, well, love doesn't shrink when it's shared, it only grows bigger." Evelyn found them like that, hugging amid colorful canvases. She carried another old box of memories, this time containing dusty videotapes. "I found some old recordings," she said softly. "Marie and James having a picnic at the park. She was pregnant with you, Sophie?" I thought maybe Lily's eyes lit up. "Can we watch them now?" As David set up the outdated video equipment, he reflected on how each new piece of the past helped Lily understand herself better. Her drawings had evolved in recent days, showing not just people and places, but emotions: hope, fear, love, longing. The sound of Jennifer's laughter filled the room as the video played. Lily squeezed David's hand, her eyes glued to the screen where her mother, young and glowing, rested a 6-month baby bump while Michael tried to assemble a swing in the backyard. "She has your smile," Lucas commented from the floor. "And you do the same thing with your nose when you laugh." Lily touched her nose, surprised and delighted by this small connection with her mother. David watched his daughter soak up every detail, her fingers unconsciously tracing movements as though already planning her next drawing. Later that evening, Bob arrived with updates on the legal side. While the children slept, the adults gathered in David's office. "We've secured documents proving serious irregularities at the hospital," Jerry explained. "This supports the theory that Marie and James didn't willingly abandon Sophie, but it also complicates our legal situation." "How so?" David asked, though he already feared the answer. "If it's proven they were victims of a crime, they could have grounds to contest the adoption. Our best path is to establish an open dialogue from the start, aiming for a shared custody." The agreement Evelyn, who had been silent until then, spoke up. "I know my daughter, if she's really alive and found a purpose helping other families who went through the same thing, she'll understand the value of what Sophie has here." David nodded, grateful for Evelyn's support. Together, they were building not just a legal case, but a bridge between Lily's past and present. On the office wall, one of Lily's drawings shimmered under the lamplight, a rainbow uniting two families with the words "Love Multiplied" written in bright letters. Perhaps that was the true essence of it all. Love didn't need to be divided or chosen. It could simply grow, multiply, create new colors and shapes, like Lily's drawings that now adorned every corner of the house, telling the story of a family continually expanding in love and understanding. David held the envelope in trembling hands. The final report from the investigators had arrived, and its contents would forever change his family's life. Evelyn sat beside him in the office, her face pale, reflecting the gravity of the moment. "We have to tell her," Anne whispered, silent tears rolling down her aged cheeks. David nodded, feeling the weight of the truth on his shoulders. Jennifer and Michael Reed had died in a car accident 6 years ago while traveling to yet another city in their relentless search for their lost daughter. "How do we tell Sophie?" David asked, his voice cracking. The answer came in the form of light footsteps in the hallway. Lily appeared at the office door, still wearing her paint-stained apron. "Dad, Grandma, what happened?" David and Evelyn exchanged glances. There was no easy way to do this. "Sophie, sweetheart, come here," David said softly, opening his arms. Lily approached, her wide eyes sensing the tension. "Did you find out something about my parents?" "Yes," dear Anne answered, her voice trembling. "We found out what happened to them." In the minutes that followed, with as much care and love as possible, David and Evelyn told Lily about the fate of her biological parents, how they had never stopped looking for her, how they had devoted their lives to helping other families separated by tragic circumstances, and how, sadly, a rainy night and a fatal accident had ended their search. Lily listened in silence, tears streaming down her cheeks. When the story ended, she stayed quiet for a long moment. "They never stopped looking for me?" she finally asked, her voice small and broken. "Never." Anne confirmed. "They loved you so much. Sophie, they never stopped loving you." Lily flung herself into David's arms, sobbing. He held her tightly, his own tears mingling with hers. Ethan, who had heard everything from the doorway, entered quietly and joined the embrace. "It's okay to cry, Sophie," he said with wisdom beyond his ears. "Mom always said tears help wash the sadness out of our hearts." In the days that followed, Lily processed her grief in various ways. Her paintings, previously colorful and hopeful, took on darker hues. She spent hours in the attic studio, creating portraits of Jennifer and Michael, drawn from pictures and stories she'd been told. Dr. Anderson, the family therapist, became a constant presence in their lives. In one particularly intense session, Lily voiced the complexity of her emotions. "How can I miss people I never really knew?" she asked, clutching her teddy bear. "Love doesn't require physical memories to exist," Dr. Martinez explained kindly. "You carry their love in your DNA, in Grandma Anne's stories, in the features you share with them." One morning at breakfast, David had an idea. "Sophie, how would you feel about creating a special place to remember your parents?" Lily's face lit up slightly. "Like a garden." "Yes, we could make a memorial garden," Anne suggested, looking encouraged by the idea. "Marie loved flowers. We could plant her favorites, daisies and lies." The memorial garden project became a family effort. David hired a landscaper, but all key decisions came from Lily. She chose a quiet spot in the backyard beneath an old oak tree. Ethan helped pick stones for a path. "We can use colorful stones," he suggested, "so sad places can still have color." Evelyn brought seedlings from her own garden, including some Jennifer had planted as a child. That way, a part of her continues to grow, for she explained to Sophie a wooden bench was installed, and Lily decided to paint it with symbols representing her two families. Birds flying high for her parents watching over her, and strong roots symbolizing her current family. One particularly meaningful afternoon, the family gathered in the newly completed garden for a small ceremony. Lily had prepared something special, a letter to her parents. "Dear Mom and Dad," she began, reading, her voice trembling slightly. "Even though I never met you, I feel your love through Grandma Anne's stories and the old pictures. I know you never stopped looking for me, and that means so much to me. I want you to know I'm okay. I have a family who loves me very much. Thomas, who is the best dad I could ask for, Lucas, who's the coolest brother in the world, and Grandma Anne, who helps me feel you close. I promise to try to be someone you'd be proud of. I'll keep drawing Mom, just like you did. And I'll be brave. Like you, Dad? With love, Sophie." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden when she finished. David hugged his daughter, feeling certain Jennifer and Michael, wherever they were, approved of the family their little girl had found. Family therapy sessions continued, helping everyone process not just loss, but also strengthen the bonds that held them together. Dr. Anderson observed how Lily began to integrate her two realities, the pain of losing her birth parents and the joy of her present family. "It's like I have two hearts," Sophie explained during one session, "one that hurts for the parents I lost and one that's full of love for the family." I have Evelyn, who had feared this discovery might drive a wedge between Lily and David, was relieved to see the opposite happen. The bond between father and daughter only grew stronger, now rooted in an even deeper honesty. One night, as David tucked Lily into bed, she asked a question that took him by surprise. "Dad, do you think Mom Marie and Dad James would be happy that you're my dad?" David sat on the edge of the bed, choosing his words carefully. "You know, Sophie, from everything I've learned about your parents, the thing they wanted most was for you to be loved and happy. I think they'd be at peace knowing you found a family that loves you as much as they did." Lily gave a sleepy smile. "So I have 4 angels watching over me, Mom and Dad in heaven, and you and Lucas here on earth." David kissed her forehead, touched. "And don't forget, Grandma Ann, 5 angels." Then Sophie murmured, almost asleep, "I'm a very lucky girl." The memorial garden became a place of healing for the entire family. Lily often did her homework there, surrounded by the flowers her mother loved. Ethan sometimes read her stories on the painted bench. Evelyn spent hours tending the plants, feeling connected to her daughter through this act of love. Watching all this, David understood that family was more than blood ties or legal documents. It was about hearts expanding to hold more love, about pain turned into growth, about finding beauty even in the hardest circumstances. The garden thrived, as did Lily, who gradually learned to carry both the memory of the parents she lost and the love of the family she found. Her paintings began to reflect that integration, light and shadow, sorrow and joy, loss and love, all coexisting in harmony on the canvas as they did in her heart. The scent of Christmas cookies filled the Miller home. Lily and Ethan were in the kitchen with Evelyn, preparing the special recipe Jennifer used to make as a child. David watched from the doorway, his heart overflowing at how much his family had grown and changed over the past year. "Grandma, tell me again how Mom Marie decorated the cookies," Sophie asked, focused on applying frosting to a gingerbread star. Evelyn smiled gently, running a hand over her granddaughter's hair. She always made snowflake patterns, saying each one was unique and special, like the people we love. Ethan, his face dusted with flour, proudly held up his cookie. "Look, Sophie, I made one that looks like your painting of the memorial garden." Lily grinned at her brother. Her artistic talent had flourished over the past year, and she was now preparing for her first school art show. Her works told a story of loss, love, and renewal that touched everyone who knew her. "Tomorrow's the big day," David remarked, finally stepping into the kitchen. Nervous about the exhibition, Lily shook her head, determination shining in her eyes. "No, I want everyone to see my whole story. I want them to know about the homeless girl who found not one, but 2 families to love." The next morning, the school gym was transformed into an art gallery. Lily's paintings were arranged in chronological order, telling her journey. The first canvas showed a lonely girl on the streets, painted in dark, cold tones. As the series progressed through her encounter with David and Ethan, the moment she saved the boy from an accident, her integration into their home, the colors grew warmer, though still tinged with shadows of fear and uncertainty. Meeting Evelyn brought new hues to the narrative, golds and ambers reminiscent of old photographs. Imagine portraits of Jennifer and Michael, drawn from stories and pictures, depicted the love that existed before Lily was even born. The discovery of her biological parents' fate was portrayed in a particularly moving piece. A sunset with 2 silhouettes fading into the horizon, while 3 figures stood strong in the foreground, united. The final painting, The exhibition centerpiece depicted the memorial garden in full bloom. On the painted bench sat Lily, surrounded by her family. David, Ethan, and Evelyn beside her. And in the flowers and butterflies dancing around them, subtle suggestions of Jennifer and Michael, present in spirit. "It's extraordinary," the art teacher, Mrs. Davis, commented, moved. "Who you've captured so much love and healing in these pieces." Sophie visitors paused for a long time before each painting, many discreetly wiping away tears. Ethan proudly acted as a guide, explaining the story behind each artwork with his unique, childlike sincerity. "This is when Sophie saved my life," he pointed out, "and that's why Dad promised to save hers too. Now we're all a family." Evelyn stayed close to the section portraying Jennifer and Michael, gently sharing memories with anyone who asked. Her heart, once filled only with pain, now overflowed with renewed love through Lily. David watched it all with a mix of pride and gratitude. Who could have imagined that the moment in the park when a little homeless girl saved his son and asked only for a plate of food would so profoundly change their lives? After the exhibition, the family decided on a special visit. They returned to Central Park, where it all began. The place was quiet on that winter afternoon, a few snowflakes drifting down. "It was right here," Sophie said, stopping by the swings. "I saw Lucas chasing the ball, and you didn't hesitate for a second," David finished, hugging her. "You saved not just his life, but mine too. You showed me the true meaning of family." Ethan ran over to the swings, calling Lily to join him. Evelyn sat on a bench with David, watching the children play. Marie would be so proud. She said softly, "Sophie has the same brave, loving heart and the same creative spark David added through her art. She's not only processing her story, but also touching other people's hearts." Making a difference, Lily and Ethan came running back, cheeks flushed from the cold. "Can we get hot chocolate?" Lucas asked hopefully. "Sure," David replied, standing up. "And then, how about we finish decorating the Christmas tree? We still need to hang Sophie's special ornaments, with pictures of Mom, Marie, and Dad James," Sophie asked, eyes sparkling. "Exactly that way they can be part of our Christmas too." As they walked home, the light snowfall turned heavier, covering the world in a blanket of white. Lily held out her hand to catch a few flakes. "Grandma, remember what you said about snowflakes, how each one is unique and special?" Evelyn nodded, touched. "I think families are like that too," Sophie continued. "Mine might be different, but it's special in its own way." David squeezed his daughter's hand, feeling the truth of her words in his heart. They were like those snowflakes, unique, fragile, yet together forming something breathtakingly beautiful. And so the Miller family continued their journey, no longer defined by loss or sorrow, but by the love they had chosen to share. In the park, where a once little homeless girl had shown extraordinary courage, an extraordinary family now celebrated their love and unity, as the gently falling snow promised new beginnings for them all.